Carlton. Thanks for having me. Hi, everybody. It's great to be here today. And today we're finally going to get into some real meat of the skill set of Ninja. So I'm real excited about today's call. I'm not going to waste way too much time introducing myself because I hope you've been on one of the calls prior, one of our 3 prior calls. But again, I'm Terry Johnson. I'm a coach and instructor with Ninja Selling, but I'm also a realtor myself in Tracy, California. I've been a realtor for 26 years. I just in my 26th year as we speak. And this is where my market's at. Population about 85,000, average sale price is just a little over 400,000. And the only reason I feel like I want to share this with you is I want you to know that you have somebody coaching you or instructing you that does what you do. And I think there's just some value in that. I think there's some credibility in that. So quickly introducing what Ninja is in case you have not been on one of the calls before. This man is Larry Kendall. He is the founder of Ninja Selling and the founder and president of a company called The Group Incorporated in Fort Collins, Colorado. And the group is best known for the fact that for about 18 years running, they are the most productive company per agent in the country. They close on average 26.5 transactions per agent, although that's not an exorbitant amount of transactions. When you average it over their 185 agents, they are the most productive. Not the most money because their average sale price is only about $300, but they certainly are the most productive in transactions per agent. So that's where this comes from, Ninja Selling. What Larry Kendall is a master at is he's a master at detecting success, watching successful people, watching their habits, recording it, and then bringing it to us instructors to take out and teach to the masses. And I've been using the Ninja system in my business since September of 2001. So 15 years, and I guess what my favorite thing about the Ninja process or the Ninja system is that in all the changing that the business has done over the last 15 years, Ninja doesn't change. I mean, yes, the market changes. Yes, our tools change, but the bottom line is that we don't really have to change what we're doing because Ninja's very basic. And if you've been on the first 3 calls, you probably kind of caught on to that. It's just getting back to the basics. Making sure that we're in the right mindset, of course, which we had an amazing call on Monday. I felt like it was super awesome, and I promise not to keep you 15 minutes over today, but thanks for that latitude on Monday because it's very near and dear to my heart. So with that said, let's move on. What we're going to do today is, at the very least, I'm going to get all the way through the buyer process. If I have time after I get through the buyer process, then I may skip ahead and talk a little bit about some tips on working with buyers. But my goal today is to get through the buyer process. So without further ado, let's jump into this process. One of the things that, again, I think is awesome about Ninja is that there are processes. I don't know about you, but I do know a lot of realtors, and I coach a lot of realtors, so I think I can say this because I am you, and that is that for many of us as realtors, we wing it. Certainly, if we didn't have a system for the first few years that we were in the business, we wing it, and we're good at it, which is good news for us, good news for our clients. But the bummer is that when you wing it, you don't always get the same results. So what we're going to do today and on our last call, which I believe is on October 31st, is we're going to sharpen our skill set. We've talked about our mindset already, which is one of the success keys. We're going to talk about our skill set today and on our last call, and then we talked about our actions on our very first webinar. So if you missed that one, please take the time to go back and see what that recipe looks like, because that's what these are. The buyer process, the patterns of excellence that we talked about on our first call, the seller process, they're all recipes. And if you would liken this unto putting something together, a recipe, if you'll follow the recipe, it'll turn out. And you can be certain that the results are going to look like you want them to look because you've got a recipe. And that's where I think our industry might be lacking just a little bit in that we don't have a process for everything, but Ninja does. So let's start with the buyer process. And before we actually jump into the process, let's understand a couple of things. Probably one of the most important things that most, not just agents, but people in general, because people don't just buy houses, people buy all kinds of stuff. And the people selling that stuff, whatever it is, today, of course, we're talking about real estate, but it could be anything. What people don't understand is there's 4 stages to the buying process. And what those stages look like are on your screen right now. They're curiosity, interest, desire, and commitment. And what really this slide should say on it, and it doesn't, so I'd like you to make a note in your handout, is when a customer is at curiosity or interest, when a person is at curiosity or interest, they are not buyers. And I think our industry, especially when it comes to buyers, we like to think that anybody that walks in an open house is a buyer, anybody that calls while we're on floor is a buyer, anybody that calls off of a sign is a buyer. And the truth is that at that point, they're really only curious. You'll notice, and it's really kind of for fun and funny, but you'll get it. If we're at an open house, I've got suspects off to the side of curiosity. Because when we're at an open house and we see somebody drive by, we're just hoping they'll stop. They're just possibilities. And so they go down to the corner and they turn around and they come back and they park across the street and they get out of their car. There's a possibility. They're prospects. They're only interested. Have any of you ever gone into an open house when you weren't a buyer? I'm in Las Vegas today, and I don't live in Las Vegas. I live in Tracy, California. If I see an open house, I love to go in them. I like to see what I can get for my money wherever I'm at. I'm no more a buyer than the man in the moon. So I'm only curious, and if I decide to go in, only interested. I'm not a buyer. But if you don't know these 4 stages, certainly an untrained realtor might guess that I'm a buyer. And I don't want to mislead somebody that I am when I'm not. We don't actually become buyers until we get to the desire state. So if we're holding an open house and somebody is curious and they stop their car and they come in and they start walking around and you hear things like, oh, our couch would fit perfectly here, or wouldn't it be great if the kids played in this pool all summer next summer with all their friends? Those are buying signs. Those are soft possibilities that they might be buyers. It still doesn't mean they're buyers. What it means is that there's a possibility that they are. But I want us to know what these stages are because I think that we work with people often, and I think this because I have, that are only curious or only interested, but they're not really buyers. If I were live with you and I could see your hands, I would ask for a show of hands. How many of you have ever worked with a buyer that's not a buyer? And I know how many hands would go up. It would be almost everyone. Unless you've been in the business for 5 minutes, it's almost everyone. And so we've fallen into the trap of answering the phone. They're out in front of 123 Main Street. They ask if we can come show it, and we say, certainly we can. We jump into our car, we go show them, and we pretend like we have a buyer. What this buyer process is really all about is for us to stop meeting them at the property ever, hear me, never, ever, for safety purposes first, and then secondly, to make sure we have buyers, because the second 2 stages are the stages in which they're actually buyers. And so what I would like to propose is that if we have a process, which you will after today, if we have a process that allows for us to determine whether they're buyers or not, whether we do that in the office or at a Starbucks that's near the property that they want to look at, whatever's most convenient for the customer, we can save ourselves a lot of time. I just can think of so many times where I had a buyer and I drove them around for weeks on end and only to find out that they weren't really a buyer. Well, in my opinion, buyers are not liars, which is what our industry calls them. Agents don't do their job. And I wouldn't say that so freely if I wasn't an agent, but I am. and I believe that we just don't do our job in its entirety. So these are the 4 stages of the buying process. But before I jump into the process itself, I want to also convey that if we know our customers well enough, we should be able to create buyers every year. We should be able to create buyers from our existing database. And that would be by getting them into sensory stimulation, which is nothing more than curiosity. Think about new home sales. They're masters at getting us into curiosity. Or think about an RV and boat show. They're masters at getting us into curiosity. Or think about just going and looking at a brand new car on a car lot. They're masters at getting us into curiosity. Once they get us into curiosity, typically we become interested, and then over time, we quite often can become or will become buyers. But we've got to make sure that these people are at the right stage, not only for them, but for us, because the goal of Ninja Selling, if we go back to webinar number 1, is to increase our income per hour so that we can have a life outside of real estate. So in order to do that, what I want to do is I want to stop driving people around that aren't buyers. I want to stop driving people around that aren't buyers until next December, next fall, or December or whatever. They're not getting in my car today if they aren't going to be buyers until December. And I know how some of you, I am you. I get it. You're thinking, well, but I don't want to lose them. Well, first of all, how about we come from an abundance mindset instead of a scarcity mindset, and know that I don't want to be working with somebody that's not really a buyer. I want to be working with buyers that are buyers today or in the very near future. So that's what this process is all about. But I want to get those few people in my database, I want to get them into curiosity if I know where they might love to live, okay? So how do you create a buyer? Well, what if I know a lot about my customers, and I know of 2 or 3 customers that would love to live in XYZ area, and something in XYZ area comes on the market, and I want to just see if they'd like to take a look at it. I love the story of my friend and colleague. She's somebody that I've coached for years up in the Pacific Northwest, but she's with Windermere, Cheryl Nygaard, and she uses this buyer creation process every year to create a buyer or 2, and here's what she does. I have an example of one time when she called a buyer, and she said a condo finally came on the market in Kirkland, and it's up on the higher floors, it's vertical housing, and you said you always wanted to live there, to which her her client responded, yeah, we probably don't really want to move there now. And she goes, well, you know what? You never need to buy, but you always need to look. And she convinced them to just go take a look at the property. And what happened is he ended up buying it. He lives there now. Because if we can just get them into curiosity, if it's something that they wanted. See, she knew this about them. She knew this about this particular couple, that they wanted to live in that particular high-rise project, but they weren't in the market of buying. But if there's something out there, and I know that you're thinking about it, or I know you're going to do it in the near future, let's at least get them into curiosity, because what might happen is over the next, well, they say 9.3 to 21 months is how long a buyer takes to actually make the decision to make a move, whether it's a buyer or seller. They'll start thinking about doing that. So the point is that there's probably business right under our nose that if we were listening to our clients on a very consistent basis, they would tell us what it is they'd like to see, what it is they'd like to buy, where it is they'd like to live, what are they dreaming about. All right, so let's look at the actual buyer process itself, okay? First of all, let's give credit where credit's due. Keith Huntsman, who works for The Group Incorporated in Fort Collins, Colorado, so he works at Larry Kendall's company, is the one that is responsible for, or we give credit to, for the power of this buyer process. He added a few things to it that helped it to become scientifically the perfect buyer process. One of the things that we promise at Ninja is that we don't throw anything out there that we aren't certain that works. We aren't certain that scientifically is how somebody makes a decision. And so Keith Huntsman helped to refine the buyer's process. And in the buyer process, our goal is, or what we want to do is we want to give our customers the green light. We want the gate of their mind to be open. And one of the great real estate trainers in Colorado, Don Espromonte, wrote a book called Green Light Selling. And what it was all about was the stages of the buying process, and when the customer internally gives themselves permission to pull the trigger to become a buyer. Okay, so the first thing we need to know about the buyer process is that the buyer has fears. The buyer's not going to call you and say, so, hey, listen, Betsy, I'm thinking about buying a house, but I don't want to lose a property. I don't want to miss something. I don't want to pay too much, and I don't want anything to be wrong with it. That never happens. These are through surveys. These are the things that buyers worry about most is they don't want to lose a property. They don't want to miss something. Now, how this miss something comes in is they usually say something along the lines of, I'd like to see everything. And they don't really mean they want to see everything. They mean they don't want to miss something. Of course, they don't want to pay too much, and then they don't want something to be wrong with it. Now, let's take the fourth one here and kind of throw that one out, because there's already built-in options or contingencies within our contracts that allows for, if there's something wrong with it, for our customer to get out of the contract or get the seller to fix it or whatever. So let's really focus on the top three, because our job is to take any buyer or seller. Our job is to take them from confusion to clarity, because clear buyers buy, clear sellers sell. Confused buyers don't buy. When a buyer says to us, I want to think about it, it's typically because we have not curbed their fears. They've got a fear. They've got something in their thought process that is not allowing them to make a decision because there's something holding them back. And our job is to ask the right questions in order to make that happen. So I've kind of jumped ahead of myself, but so the process goals are to bring them to clarity, because a clear buyer has the confidence to make a commitment. That is the goal of this entire buyer process. The goal is not to show. The goal is to bring them to clarity so they'll make a commitment, find them the right house, and get them on that path immediately. If we leave them in confusion, like I've already said, they won't buy. Confused buyers don't buy. Confused buyers want to think about it. That's the most typical, quote unquote, I want to think about it. I want to sleep on it. Well, that's because there's something that is still keeping them confused, which is not allowing them to make a decision. So what are the rules of clarity then? If the rules of confusion are that confused buyers don't buy, they want to think about it, then there must be a rule for clarity, and there is. Clear buyers are decisive. And most of us have probably had this happen to us before, but clear buyers often present a solution to their own problem. They know exactly what they want to do. They know exactly how they want to proceed because they're clear. They've thought about it for that 9.3 to 21 months. And I'm sorry to just hang that over you. I haven't taught you that principle, but I can't teach you everything in an hour. But there's a research study by Hebert Research. I think it's Hebert. It's either Rubicam. Well, anyway, it doesn't matter. There was a study done that says that buyers and sellers typically take between 9.3 and 21 months to make a decision. And so once they've gotten to the point where they're decisive, they know what they want, and they'll oftentimes just tell us right out, that's what we want, okay? So as we get into the process, I want you to note that there's a sequence in which it's most important for us to ask our questions. And I love this because I'm going to use myself as an example. I won't assume that you've done it wrong, but I'll tell you I've done it wrong. And let's just call it in days of old, before I had a process. I would immediately ask on the phone, so what are you looking for? 3 bedroom, 3 bath, 3-car garage on a cul-de-sac with a pool. Perfect. Okay, so I got that. Have you met with a lender? Got that. Well, I haven't even really built a rapport. I haven't gathered information about them or asked foundational questions about their past prior learning. I haven't diagnosed how I can best serve them. Am I serving them in pain, or am I serving them in pleasure? Are they trying to find a solution to a problem, or are they trying to do something that's going to be, fun, they're happy about? And the bottom line is that I can't solve their pain or pleasure until I've gathered information, which is the foundation step. So as I go through the process, I want you to see that this is how this is the sequence in which I'm going. I'm going to build rapport, then I'm going to gather information from them, foundational type information, then I'll diagnose their problem, and then I'll solve their problem. Notice that we don't call the solution closing. That's the traditional way, is to call it a closing. We don't close. We solve buyers and sellers' pain or pleasure. During the question asking period, I want to make note of one thing, though, and that is make sure that you ask diagnostic questions. It's all the questions that they cannot answer with a yes or a no. So who, what, why, when, where, how. These are questions that they can't say yes to or no to or nod their head to. There's another one I don't have on here that's quickly becoming one of my favorites. I learned it from another one of our ninja instructors, Peter Carnegie, and I love it. He uses it just flawlessly, and I know you can too, and it says, and here's how it sounds. Tell me more about that. Or tell me how that makes you feel. Tell me more about that, or tell me how that makes you feel. Those are both questions that will draw somebody out of themselves and give them permission to start giving us information about them. So let's jump into the process. It's called a 10-step buyer process, and it's exactly that. It's 10 steps. It's a process in which I have on a clipboard. You'll get a copy of it if you haven't already, and it might be in your handout, but it's the buyer process, and hopefully you have a copy of that with you when you have a buyer come into the office or you meet them at Starbucks, because what I want you to do is I want you to use this as a recipe, okay? I want you to follow along. So the first step, as simple and as basic as it seems, how cool would it be if we coached the receptionist to greet our customers? If we happen to have a receptionist, if we happen to have somebody that greets our customers, how warm would it feel? How welcoming would it feel to our buyers if when they walked into the door, the receptionist said, "Oh, welcome, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson. Terry's expecting you. Go ahead and have a seat, and I'll call her and let her know you're here." That coaching of the receptionist can make the difference between how a peace person feels about how they can trust you as a realtor. See, because the peace person, their very first inclination to work with us is whether they can trust us or not. So if our receptionist greets them by name, in some companies that I've been coaching over the years, they've got a board on the front desk or standing in the lobby that's got the customer's name on it with the time of their appointment and who they're meeting with. And so when they walk in, they see their name right there on the board or in the frame or whatever it looks like, and they feel welcome. But what it really does is it connects them to us, and it's not even us yet, and it helps us to control the process. It helps us to begin to control the process. Now, this is not in your notes, but I want you to write it down again. It's from a different webinar, and that is that we, agents, you, are in control of the process. The customer is in control of the decision. So connect and control means that I've begun to control my process. I'm proving to them that I have a process, okay? So now we'll use me again as an example. My receptionist's name is Mona, and so Mona always knows when we have somebody coming in the office, and I'll say, Mona, so the Johnsons are coming in at 11 o'clock. Please welcome them and then tell them that you'll call me. Don't offer them coffee, water, or anything. I'll come back to that, folks. I'll tell you why in a minute, and it's huge. Mona, don't offer them anything. Please just welcome them warmly. Call me, and then it's going to be, now the ball's in my court. So Mona calls them. She says, go ahead and go up the elevator. Terry, I'll meet you at the top. So when I meet them at the top, in the connection process, it's really important for us to understand that the connection step, there's a good and a better way to connect, okay? We've been taught to stick our hand in their face. Hi, I'm Terry Johnson. Nice to meet you. And I don't mean that in a derogatory manner, but think about it for a minute. We've been taught to, get right up in their space. Terry Johnson, how are you today? Good to meet you, and shake their hand. What if instead they get off the elevator and I say, welcome, how was your drive in this morning? Thank you so much for coming. So I've enrolled them, I've acknowledged them, and then I say, by the way, I'm Terry Johnson, great to finally meet you face to face. And I say who I am. So instead of saying who I am first, what I'm doing is I'm saying who I am after I've made them feel welcome and secure in my presence. This takes practice, folks. We've spent a lifetime, especially as business people, putting our hand, toward them and saying who we are. I want us to back off a little and enroll them, acknowledge them, and then say who we are, okay? So in that first 2 minutes, this doesn't mean that we have 2 minutes to make a first impression, because here's what science tells us. We have between 7 and 12 seconds to make a first impression, 7 to 12 seconds. So this is not about first impressions. It's about the first 2 minutes of the time that we are with the customer. They've met Mona. They've come up the elevator. I've greeted them with a warmer greeting than, hi, I'm Terry Johnson. Thank you so much for coming in. How was your drive-in today? And I really appreciate you taking the time to stop by. By the way, I'm Terry Johnson. It's great to finally meet you face-to-face. What I've done is I've connected and I've taken control from Mona to me of the process that we're about to get into. Again, scientifically, something a little bit weird, but it is true, is that they, quote unquote, whoever they are, the scientists that know about this kind of stuff, that once I meet them at the top of the elevator or at the door, or I walk toward the door at Starbucks to greet them, wherever it is, when I greet them, move out of that location as quickly as you can. And the reason we want to move out of that location as quickly as we can is there's something awkward about the space that we first meet a customer in. There's just some awkwardness that's in that space. I don't know what it is. I can't explain it any further. I've just read that there is, therefore I've taken it to heart because I want to be different than my competition. So that's why I get up and I go meet them somewhere, meet them at the elevator, meet them at the door, walk to the door at Starbucks to meet them. And then I say, well, let's go on back to my office, or let's go on back to my conference room, or let's go sit at the table I've got for us at Starbucks. And it's there that I offer them the gift, and the gift is nothing more than, can I get you a cup of coffee? Can I get you a glass of water? Can I get you, something, whatever. It's just being a good hostess, being a good host. And the reason I don't want Mona to offer them this is because I want to take control of the process, number one, but number two, and way more importantly, is we live in a society that's very equity sensitive. So if I offer you something, 9 times out of 10, you feel obligated to offer me something. So it's a ping and a pong, ping and a pong. And so I'm offering them a gift because I'm about to ask them to offer me back a bunch of information about themselves. So as simple as this greeting and meeting sound, which, by the way, I'm about 2 to 3 minutes into their time in my office, I've controlled the process beautifully, and I've started the ping and the pong with regards to that equity-sensitive way that we are. So right when I get to my desk, I've offered them, something to drink, or go and get them a cup of coffee or a glass of water or whatever. I ask their permission if I could ask them a few questions. May I ask you a few questions? I've already told them on the phone that I need a few minutes of your time to get to know how I can best serve you. But now I'm going to ask their permission to ask them a few questions. And so now I'm going to go through my buyer questions, which are in your handout. I'm not going to go through them line by line because I've learned them over time. So I'm just going to kind of talk you through what it sounds like to me. So tell me, do you own a home now? How many homes have you bought? How did you like the way that process worked? Is there anything that you didn't like about the way that process worked? When you bought your last house, when did you buy your last house? When you bought your last house, how did that process look? How did you go about starting that process? Did you like the way that process worked? The reason I'm asking these questions is these are foundational or prior learning questions, and so it's after the connection step. And the reason I'm doing this is I'm asking them how they would like to be treated. People love to be treated the way they want to be treated, not the way I want to be treated, the way they want to be treated. And so by asking them these questions, not only am I figuring out how they want to be treated, but I'm learning what they liked about the process and what they didn't like about the process so that I can treat them the way they want to be treated. I'll never forget my favorite story until I get a better one is a story where a guy called into the office and said he wanted to see Woodland Court. And I said, okay, he said at 6 o'clock tonight. And I said, okay, I'll set us up an appointment, but I'll need to meet you at my office. And he came unglued immediately and said, I'm not meeting you at your office. I've been looking for 9 months, and all of you guys are the same, meaning me and every other agent he's ever talked to. So he's not face-to-face with me, but I'm smart enough to know now because I've got a process that I need to start asking him some of these prior learning questions. Well, tell me, Steve, what do you mean by that? Unfortunately, I'm sorry, and I can't change our whole industry, but I pride myself in being a little different than my competition. Tell me why you're not willing to come into the office. And he proceeds to tell me why and everything that every agent ever did wrong for the last 9 months that he didn't like, which gave me the perfect recipe for what he did like. What he told me he didn't want was, I'm going to treat him the opposite way. I'm going to give him what he does want. And of course, once I told him that I was going to do that, and that's the way I run my business, he had no problem. He and his wife came into my office. We went and saw Woodland, and they didn't buy it, as they almost never do. But we set up a process, and I got to know him better, and that way it allowed for us to find them the perfect house, and it didn't take much time at all. But I differentiated myself by having them come into the office and by asking these prior learning questions and finding out exactly how they want to be treated. So you'll notice at the bottom of number 3 or step 3, I should say, step 3 of the 10 steps, that it says, are you familiar with the current market? Are you familiar with how real estate works here in Tracy, California? Those are 2 really important questions because I want to know if they are familiar with the market. If they're not, I want to tell them what they need to know about my particular market right now. So in my world, right now, it would be there's multiple offers on a lot, if not on all the homes that are priced right, there are multiple offers. This will mean several things to you, and I'll begin to explain what it means. Multiple offers mean you need to be approved. You need to be approved with a local lender. You need to be quick and decisive. All these things that they need to know about my market or your market. If you're the one talking, what does your market look like? It depends on the price range. It depends on the part of the country they're in. But are you familiar with the current market conditions, and are you familiar with how real estate works here in XYZ USA? And they'll either tell me they are or they aren't, and what they're familiar with, what they know about the current market. I'm really just using this as a lead-in to say, well, I've prepared a package for you. If they tell me they bought an investment property last month, so they're really fresh buyers, it doesn't matter. I've still prepared a buyer packet for you. Everybody gets the same buyer packet. Now, for those of you that are not have not been on my website. I was trying to think if I'd ever given you this. I'm going to type it in real quick in my in the chat box, and I'm only putting this there so that you know that if you'd like to see an example of a buyer packet, mine is on my website, theninjapath.com. And you can use it if you'd like. You can change it. You can do anything with it that you'd like, but it's really there as an example of what the buyer packet looks like and what the seller packet looks like, okay? So I have a packet for them, and I say to them quite simply that here is a packet that is everything about what the buyer process looks like. We talk a little bit about agency. We talk a little bit about the buyer-broker agreement, which I don't have them sign either of them here. I wait till step 10 because I'm not trying to get them to work with me yet. What I'm trying to get them to do is understand the importance of knowing the process and knowing I have a process. So just a few of the things that can be in a buyer packet. And honestly, all a buyer packet, all a seller packet is an informational packet full of fluff. Fluff about me, fluff about my company, fluff about the buyer process, and you know, it's just fluff. I'm trying to differentiate myself from my competition, as simple as that. So I get to step number 5 of the buyer process, and I say to them, I have this process called the funnel process, and I actually draw the funnel. So if you don't mind, I'm going to go ahead and skip to my handwritten one because I actually draw this diagram. And you've got the verbiage in the buyer process, so you can read it at your leisure. But here's how it sounds if they're sitting across from me. As kind of silly as this funnel process looks, let me show you how the process is going to go. I don't want you to miss anything. So what I'm going to do, and I'm drawing it this whole time that I'm talking to them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put everything from the multiple listing service in the funnel. I'm going to put everything that's brand new in the funnel. I'm going to put any for sale by owners in the funnel. And of course, the list that you brought, I'm going to put that in the funnel. And we're going to put everything in the funnel so that you don't miss anything. When we start deciding exactly what it is that we're actually going to look at that are good possibilities for your next home, whatever comes out the bottom, somewhere between 3 and 5 properties, hopefully, I'm going to ask that you always have a rolling top 3 or your 3 favorites. And that's because I don't want you to pay too much either. And so what I'll do when we come back to the office is I will do an analysis for you to make sure that you aren't paying too much. Or like I said, in this particular market in Tracy, California, should you decide to pay too much or over full price because you have to in order to get it, that you feel very confident and comfortable that that's what you really want to do. What I've done by using this funnel process is I have curbed their fears. They don't want to miss anything. They don't want to lose a property, and they don't want to pay too much. So I didn't say I'm going to show you all 973 houses that are on the MLS. Now, note that I put MLS and FSBO, but also note that I didn't say MLS and FSBO. I said multiple listing service and for sale by owner. They don't know what our acronyms mean. So even though you write it that way, please say it in its entirety so they understand what you're talking about. And then I go on to explain to them how I'm different. As silly as this diagram seems, let me tell you why I use this funnel process. It's called a process of elimination. Most agents use a process of selection, which means you would have called into the office. You said, I want a 3-bedroom, 3-bath, 3-car garage on a cul-de-sac with a pool. And the agent would have searched by exactly those 5 parameters, which means that the agent could have missed something that could have worked for you had they dug down and asked more questions. We'll get to that in a few minutes. I don't use a process of selection. I use a process of elimination. I want to put everything in the funnel so as to not miss anything. You say you want a 3-bedroom, but I'm going to figure out why you want a 3-bedroom, because if you don't actually need 3 bedrooms, maybe you need 2 bedrooms in an office or 2 bedrooms in a den, I might set up my search differently. The average agent uses a process of selection. I opt to use a process of elimination so that you won't miss anything. And then I seal this with, does that look like a process that will work for you? This only takes a few seconds, not even a minute to explain. But the key here is that you use the key points, that it is a process of elimination versus selection, curbing their fear that you don't want them to miss anything and that you don't want them to pay too much. And probably the most important factor in this is that you draw it. So for my perfectionists out there that are tempted to go find the perfect picture of a funnel and have a copy, a whole bunch of copies of them made, please don't do that. Here's why. Science has proven to us that people's attention span is typically not longer than about 12 seconds. When I draw this on a piece of paper or a tablet that's in the middle of my desk, if they happen to have floated off and started thinking about the kids or something else, it brings their attention back to the process that we're covering right now. So be sure and speak these key points to them, and be sure and ask their permission again, does this look like a process that will work for you? Because once again, when we ask, does this look like a process that will work for you, we're bringing their attention back to us again and not letting them drift off, because we tend to, as agents, talk too much. We like to talk, and we love that we know so much, and we think that they're paying attention. And science has proven that none of us, ourselves included, can pay attention much longer than 12 seconds at a time. Okay, so we're at step number 6, but I just want to make note real quick. I want you to see right here, I'm at step number 6 of a 10-step buyer process, and I have not asked them what they're looking for yet, and I have not talked about money yet. It's really important. The reason I've not done that is I am so much more apt to spend 45 minutes with a customer discovering whether they're truly a buyer or not than to drive somebody around in the car after I've asked them on the phone, what are you looking for and how much can you spend? I want to get to the bottom of whether they're a buyer or not. If they're not a buyer, I'm going to let them down slowly at the end of my process. But the bottom line is that I don't know if they're a buyer yet. When we just go meet them at a property, we pretend they're buyers or we hope they're buyers, and unfortunately, sometimes they're not. So I love question number 6. Question number 6 is the first of 3 opportunities I'm going to give them to tell me they're not quite buyers yet. So instead of assuming they're buyers and then calling them liars, I'm going to actually let them tell me they're not buyers yet. And if they're buyers next year, here's the good news. I'm still going to be in the business, and I still want to serve them next year, and I'll serve them well the whole next 12 months until I do sell them a house. But I'm not driving them around today. Just not going to do it. They're not buyers. So number 6 is on a scale of 1 to 10. Tell me, where do you believe you are in the process? It's just a real simple question. Where do you think you are in the process? 1 being you just started looking today, and 10 being if we found the perfect house, where are you in the process? And they'll hem-haw around and they'll tell you about where they are in the process, and it'll be somewhere between 1 and 10. When they answer us, our next question is, so tell me, what would have to happen for you to be a 10? And let them tell you, well, I'd need to get a job. Well, my dad's giving me the down payment, and he's on a African safari in Africa for 3 months, and I can't reach him. All these reasons that we never ask up front, and then we call buyers liars. What would have to happen for you to be a 10? Okay, well, so you'll have the money then in 3 months, so that's going to probably be around the 1st of the year, maybe the end of December. Perfect. That's good to know. Anything else? Anything else? Constantly be drilling down to find out specifically why they're not a 10. Never say, what do I have to do for you to be a 10? Okay? What you want to always ask is, what has to happen for you to be a 10? It's up to them to be a 10. What about that? Tell me more. Why is this important to you? Just keep drilling down to find out what it is that drives them. Why are they there? Why are they looking at properties? Because oftentimes they won't be a buyer today. It might be 30 days. It might be 60 days. It might be next year. And if it is, I want to save us time. More income per hour so we can have a life outside of real estate. So finally, at step number 7 is the first time I'm going to ask them what they're looking for. But instead of saying to them, so tell me, what are you looking for in a home? First of all, before I explain step number 7, let's let's get one thing clear. They called on a specific house, or they called on, you know, you kind of have an idea of what they're thinking. What they're thinking they qualify for, what they say they want. And so I slip a piece of paper across the table to both of them. Do me a favor. Each of you make a list of everything that you would love in your next home. Everything. And I lead them to believe that they're going to get everything. And I kind of do this on purpose. I want to see what they think they have, you know, they want in their next home. But when they're all done with that, I ask them to put a star by the 3 things they can't live without. The 3 things they can't live without. Now, there's science behind this, but that's not what today's class is about. So I really can't explain it all to you. But if you would take my word for it, here's what we know. Human beings, when it comes to real estate, if given more than 3 to 5 variables at one time, it puts them into confusion. So the reason that I ask them to put a star by the 3 things they can't live without is I'm banking on the 2 of them, since they're buying a house together, if there's 2, that one of their stars will match and that they don't have more than 3 to 5 variables to work with. So they put on a piece of paper the things they can't live without. Here's why I want to know that. Step 7 and 8 really go hand in hand. They're almost one step. When they write things down on the piece of paper, what they're listing are the what they want and the features they want. But here's what we know. People don't buy the whats and the features. People buy the whys and the benefits. And so then it is our job at step number 8 to figure out why they want what they want. What is the benefit to them to having that? So they've made this list. They've got a star by the 3 things they can't live without. So I say to them, okay, you're first. What's your first star? And I begin to ask them, what's yours? Okay, tell me why you want that. Oh, we want to live in a golf community. Okay, are you golfers? No, actually, we aren't golfers. We love the view. We like the open space. Whatever. 4 bedrooms, the next person says, but they don't need 4 bedrooms. They need a guest suite and 2 offices. So they don't really need 4 bedrooms, but the average agent is going to search by what? A golf community, a 4-bedroom, a 3-car garage, a large kitchen, and a large lot. And they might miss something that would really meet their needs, because really what they wanted was wide open spaces that somebody else takes care of, that the neighbors aren't too close. They don't really need a 4-bedroom. They could probably, quite frankly, use a 2-bedroom with an office and a den. They don't really need a 3-car garage. They could use a 2-car garage with an alcove. But if you don't drill down and find out why they want what they want, you will show them the wrong things, and they will think that we're dragging them around and making them tired. If we'll spend 10 minutes, 5 minutes on this process in our offices, they'll tell us why they want what they want, and what we know is that they buy their whys, not their what. So what we're trying to figure out is, why do they want that, so that I can search by their whys and not their what. It's at this point that I want to bring up the 85% perfect home concept. I want to say to them something along the lines of, have you heard of the 85% perfect home? And they'll say no, of course, and say to them, here's what it looks like. In the industry, we show a lot of houses, and typically one person likes the kitchen, one person likes the backyard, one person likes the master, but there's never a perfect house. And so what we kind of like to say is, if we found 85% of what you were looking for, kind of nodding our head yes, right? Would you kind of consider that pretty doggone good, 85% perfect? To which they're probably going to nod their head and say, yeah, I think I kind of agree with that. You can throw it out there if you'd like, if you've ever built your own home, and say something like, we've built our own home, and it's still not perfect. We get it done, and we still aren't sure that we shouldn't have done this, that, or something else, or we should have done this differently. So there's really just no such thing as a perfect home. When you plant that seed in their mind, what's going to happen is they're going to begin to say to themselves, you know what, this might be an 85%er. This could work. So I'm at step number 9, and I want you to note that at step number 7 and 8 is the first time I asked about what they were looking for, and at step number 9 is the first time that I'm going to ask, what about their money, okay? So I've just used an example here, depending on what company you work for, and if you have in-house lenders. I don't have an in-house lender. Some people do. It doesn't matter if you do or you don't. It's at this point that I ask. So I failed to ask, do you have a house to sell? Will you be paying cash? Will you be getting a loan? And they're going to tell us at this point whether they have a loan or not, because when we say, do you have a loan, they'll say, well, I met with a lender, I have a letter, whatever they say. Ask their permission if they'd like to talk to a second person. Would you like a second opinion on that loan? What we want to do is we want to make sure that they've got the best loan for them. If they're in my market, if they're in Tracy, California, one of the deciding factors on whether or not your offer gets accepted in this particular market is, do they have a letter from a local lender, somebody that the rest of the realtors know can actually close the transaction? Because what if they come in with a lender letter from, and I could say anybody, so please don't take offense to this, but, LendingTree.com or QuickenLoans.com, well, maybe they can close it, maybe they can't. But in this market, especially in my market, the lender is extremely important. So would you be willing to get a second opinion? Now, like I said, in my world, I don't have a lender in my office. So that would mean that I got my lender prepared that the Johnsons were coming in, and that maybe at about 11 o'clock I'll be ready to have them call you. And I'll take them into the conference room or into another office and let them call in the privacy of the call and not with me sitting right there, to just be sure they're qualified for the process. Are they really buyers? And so they go and they talk about their loan. If they don't go and talk about their loan, they're paying cash. They brought proof of their funds. They have a loan letter and it's from somebody locally, and we're good to go. It's at this point that we do the MLS search. So while they're meeting with the lender, or if they're sitting right there. But here's what I know. Most of the time, we're not showing homes today because we have to give notice. So bottom line is they get back from the lender. We've looked at what's available. We've searched by elimination versus selection. We ask them how it went with the lender. We talk a little bit about the loan. And then we ask them, are you familiar with the 1% equals 10% rule of thumb? To which, once again, they will say, no, I'm really not. Well, it has to do with the interest rates today. And for most of us, we're well aware that the interest rate right now is one of their biggest risks. This example could have been even lower, 3.5%, but let's use this example. So Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, 4.5% loan right now, your payments can be $1,013 a month, so that's a $200,000 loan. If the interest rates were to go up to 5.5%, we're looking at about a $22,000 dip in your buying power, or a 10% drop in your buying power. If the interest rates were to go up 2%, it goes down to $40,000. I don't know about your world, but in my world, if you go from 200 to 160, it goes from a neighborhood you would barely consider living in to I absolutely won't live in that neighborhood type thing. What it does is it creates a sense of urgency. And so we want to make sure that they understand that if they are buyers at this point, that there is a sense of urgency, okay? As I do my MLS search, I want to share something with you that was just brilliant that I never thought of until I went to my very first Ninja installation where we came up with this, and that was a searching the pendings or under contract as well as the actives. I had always just searched just the actives. I mean, what do I need to see what's under contract? Well, let me show you. So, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, there were 18 matches, 18 possibilities. However, 7 of those are under contract, which means that there's 11 available. What I just did is I created urgency, because what they're saying to themselves is, oh, great, the best ones are gone. And the truth is, you and I both know that the best ones aren't gone. 4 of those might have come on the market today and nobody's seen them. But what we want to prove to them is that things are moving. They're moving. Things are moving. Whether they're moving quickly or they're moving, we want to present them the actual market, okay? So as we do this, what we're going to do is we have made a determination at this point whether or not we think they're buyers. We've asked them on a scale of 1 to 10. We've talked about money. And so one of the things that we want to do is we want to have determined if we think we're going to be taking them out to show them property. And what we'll tell them is that some of these we will view online. Now, so this is the buyer that's not a buyer today. Here's how I would let them down. So some of these, let's take a look at them online, and then you'll drive by them in person, and we'll decide when the time comes for you to buy what we're actually going to see. So I've just told them without saying it, you're not getting in my car today because you're not a buyer today. They know they're not a buyer today also, but I'm trying to let them down slowly and let them know that I'm going to be a proactive, trusted advisor. I'm going to make sure that you're constantly getting all the current listings, so that every single time you drive by something, what I need you to do is I need you to make a note. Do you love it? Do you hate it? What do you like about it? What don't you like about it? And shoot me a quick text or an email and let me know what you liked or didn't like about it, so that I can keep my finger on the pulse. Because when the time comes, whether it's next summer or in December, I know exactly what you're looking for. But let's just pretend for a moment that we're actually going to take them and show them property, whether it's today or tomorrow morning. We want to have all the show properties, of course, printed out or on your device, depending on how you show property. But you want a copy and you want them to have a copy. You want the visual gatherers to be able to have something to take notes on. You want the kinesthetic people to have something that they can touch and thumb through constantly. You want to have all the actives with you, because inevitably we'll drive by something that they'll say, oh, why didn't you show me that one? As with the solds, have all the solds, and whether, again, that's your device or a one-liner printed, the bottom line is we have all the information with us, so that if they were to ask us a question or want to make a decision while we're going, we're giving them the green light. The gate of the mind is open. We're giving them permission to make a decision. Now, I told you that there was going to be 3 opportunities for them to tell me that they're not a buyer. The second opportunity is step number 10. So tell me, if we find the perfect house today, that 85% perfect home today, what will you do? Because, see, the perfectionist doesn't have it in them to make a decision today. Even if they want to, they can't make a decision today, because they've got to look backwards in order to look at today, in order to look forward to make a decision. So they need time. They really do need to sleep on it. And so it's at this opportunity that they'll tell me, if we find it today, what do you do? They'll tell me whether they're going to buy a house or not and why. But the second thing that I like, besides the 85% perfect home concept, is the cream puff discussion. Well, okay, so you're going to need to sleep on it. So clearly you and I, as agents, have determined that they're perfectionists. Let me tell you what a cream puff is. A cream puff is that property that's perfect. It shows perfect. It's in perfect condition. It's got all the perfect appointments, the perfect amenities. It's in the perfect school district. It's a dollhouse. And it won't be just us that loves it. There will be others that love it. So my question is, if we come across the cream puff today, and you must have an extra day to think about it, that's just the way you process, are you going to be okay with a cream puff slipping through your fingers? And you just leave it at that, because if you walk through a cream puff, the perfectionist might say something like, gosh, I don't know, Terry, this is a cream puff, and as much as I want to think about it, I love this place. I would just die if we didn't get it. You know, we might respond with, well, how about we go back to the office and scratch out an offer and see see how you feel after we write the offer. If you want to take the offer home and look at it, you can, but let's just process it for a little bit longer. So you're giving them permission to maybe make a decision faster than they would otherwise. But when you ask this question, if we find the perfect house, we find the 85% perfect home today, what will you do? It's the second opportunity that I've given them to tell me they're not really a buyer. So in closing, the last opportunity to tell me that they're not really a buyer is not official ninja material, okay? I just love it. One of my clients in Hawaii said to me, Terry, here's what I do. And so let me give credit where credit's due. Daryl Slim, he's on the Big Island of Hawaii. He said he stands up from his desk, he claps his hands, and he says, let's go buy a house. And he said, Terry, if they're not buyers, they will get their face will turn pale white, And they'll go, but wait a minute, you act like we're buying a house today. To which he then can understand, are they really buyers or aren't they? Folks, I get that an hour is not enough time to process this entire buyer process, but I hope I've given you enough clues to at least get a process in order. Start using a process where you'll get better results with your buyers. If you have any questions, I put my website on there. My email is terry@theninjapath.com. And thank you so much for the opportunity to serve you today. I look forward to hearing from you.